The first thing I saw when I came back to life was the 0 mark on my ruler, and it was still perfectly aligned. Not the hospital ceiling where I had died. Not the sound of metal shelving collapsing behind me. Not my mother shouting for someone to lift the beam off my legs. Just the tiny black 0 line on a clear 30-centimeter drafting ruler, pressed against the bottom edge of a printed floor plan in the Meridian Design Hall, under lights so white they made every pencil shaving look like evidence. My hand was steady. That was the part that frightened me most. In my first life, my hand had shaken so badly at this exact desk that the 0 mark slipped 0.5 millimeter, and I blamed myself for everything that followed. The ruler lay across the plan for the North Annex Safety Redesign Final, its transparent body scratched from years in my father's toolbox, its corner chipped, its approval sticker still wrapped around the far end. Candidate 39. Registered straight edge. 8:06 a.m. The exam clock read 10:17. 43 minutes remained. I had already found the scale error. I had already written, in the margin beside question 5, printed scale note conflicts with scale bar. Use scale bar. 10 equals 9.6 centimeters on this copy. In my first life, Mr. Victor Haldane, head of design technology, scholarship convener, and father of the boy who needed the error to stay invisible, leaned over my desk, saw that note and whispered, "Snap the ruler, Mira. If the tool is faulty, nobody will blame your measurements." I believed him. I snapped it. The crack sounded like a bone. My measurements were discredited, my safety redesign marked inconsistent, and his son's polished but dangerously wrong plan won the Calder drafting scholarship. Years later, I died in a community theater collapse caused by an evacuation plan drawn from a scaled PDF no one checked against the actual building. My last thought under the falling storage rack was not poetic. It was a command. Use your ruler. Now I was 17 again. The ruler hole under my palm, Mr. Haldane walking down the aisle with his clipboard, and the 0 mark still telling the truth. A ruler is an honest object until someone asks you to break it. It does not care about donor names, scholarship committees, polished portfolios, or which student's parent chairs the exam. It lies only if it is warped, printed badly, or used by a hand too frightened to hold it still. Mine was not beautiful. Most Meridian students brought expensive drafting sets in black cases, aluminum scale rulers with rotating triangular faces, Japanese mechanical pencils, architect's tape, erasing shields, and transparent templates with circles cut so clean they looked surgical. My ruler was a basic clear plastic one my father had used when he still worked as a shopfitter, before the nerve damage in his right hand made fine cutting unsafe. It had paint flecks near the 15-centimeter mark and a burn spot from the time he set it too close to a soldering iron. But it was straight. He had checked it against a steel bench rule the night before the exam and said, "This one tells the truth. Keep it flat and don't let anyone borrow your line." At the time, I thought he was talking about measurement.
He was.
He was also talking about life, though fathers who repair things rarely announce metaphors when they can hand you plastic and trust you to learn later. The Calder Drafting Scholarship was supposed to reward practical design thinking. That was why I wanted it so badly. It was not just another written exam where rich students could polish essays until the sentences shone brighter than the ideas. It was a 3-hour technical drawing and spatial reasoning final. Each candidate received a printed floor plan of a fictional but realistic school annex and had to redesign circulation, emergency egress, wheelchair access, storage, and fire door placement within strict constraints. We had to work by hand.
No tablets. No CAD.
No calculators beyond basic arithmetic. 1 registered ruler, 1 compass, 2 pencils, 1 eraser, and the plan packet. The winner received full final year tuition, a summer placement at the Calder Architecture and Safety Lab, a mentor from the university's built environment faculty, and publication of the winning redesign in the State Student Design Journal. To my classmates, it was prestige. To me, it was the difference between staying at Meridian and leaving with a neat email about financial realities sent to my mother's phone while she was on her lunch break. My name was Mira Devlin, and I learned buildings from the way poor ones fail loudly and expensive ones fail quietly. Our apartment block had a stairwell that flooded whenever rain came from the east. The laundry door dragged on the floor because the frame had shifted. The fire map in the lobby still showed a storage room that had been converted into a locked office 3 years earlier. My mother reported it twice. The building manager wrote back once, "Noted for future review." My father took one look at the map and said, "Future review is where people put things they don't want to fix before someone gets hurt." He could not do shop fitting anymore, but he still saw space like a living thing, where people would walk, where they would gather, where panic would jam, where a door swung the wrong way, where a step became a trap for tired feet. I inherited that from him. At Meridian, teachers praised my spatial intuition. They did not know it came from memorizing which stairwell lights worked in our building and which ones flickered out before the second landing. Mr. Victor Haldane taught design technology with the authority of a man who believed clean lines were evidence of moral character. He had iron gray hair, a narrow face, rectangular glasses, and a clipboard always held against his chest like a shield with forms on it. He spoke in clipped sentences. Measure twice. Erase fully. Presentation matters. A drawing should not apologize for itself. Parents trusted him because he made creativity sound disciplined. The principal trusted him because the design faculty won competitions. Students feared him because he could stand behind your desk for 3 seconds and make your drawing feel childish. His son, Elliot Haldane, was the school's design prince. Tall, neat, always calm, always carrying a black drafting tube even when the assignment was small enough for a folder. Elliot was talented. That mattered. He could draw beautiful elevations and make a floor plan look like it belonged in a magazine. But he trusted given information too much. If a plan note said 1:100, he used 1:100. If a door symbol looked standard, he treated it as standard. If a corridor seemed wide enough on paper, he did not imagine 2 panicked students and a wheelchair trying to pass through smoke. He designed for drawings. I designed for bodies. The North Annex packet was a trap disguised as a design problem. The cover page said the plan was printed at 1:100 scale. The scale bar at the bottom of the plan, however, did not match. 10 meters on the bar measured 9.6 centimeters on the printed copy. That meant the plan had been reduced slightly in printing, probably from a digital file scaled to fit the page. A student who blindly used the printed scale note would design corridors, ramps, and door clearances that looked compliant but were actually too narrow when converted back to real dimensions. A student who checked the scale bar would notice the mismatch and adjust all measurements accordingly. The instructions even hinted at it in one sentence most students would skim. Where printed notes conflict with measurable reference bars, candidates must justify the measurement system used. In other words, the exam was not asking us to draw prettily. It was asking us whether we trusted the label more than the line. In my first life, I found the error at 10:17 and felt the thrill of a door opening. I measured the scale bar once, twice, 3 times. 9.6 centimeters. I checked the corridor width. If I used 1:100, the west passage seemed to meet the minimum emergency clearance. If I corrected by the scale bar, it did not. The entire redesign changed. Storage had to move. The accessible route had to bend differently. The double doors needed widening. The fire exit swing on the east side would block the circulation path unless repositioned. I wrote the note in the margin, drew a correction factor, and began redrafting. Then Mr. Haldane stopped behind me. He was not supposed to comment on content during the final. Supervisors could answer procedural questions, replace broken pencils, and ensure students used registered tools. They could not advise, correct, or challenge design decisions. But Mr. Haldane had a way of making supervision look like weather, always present, impossible to accuse of touching anything. His clipboard cast a shadow over my plan. "Candidate 39, he said quietly. "Why have you altered the scale?" The scale note conflicts with the bar. The packet states 1:100. The bar measures 9.6 centimeters for 10 meters. His eyes moved to my ruler, then to my margin note, then toward Elliot, who sat 2 rows ahead, drawing confidently with the expected 1:100 scale. In my first life, I did not understand the direction of that glance quickly enough. "Your ruler is old," Mr. Haldane said. It may be warped. It was approved. Approval checks straightness, not precision. That was false. The inspection had checked both, but false statements from calm men often arrive wearing enough authority to pass the first gate. If your tool is faulty, your drawing will be considered compromised. My stomach dropped. What should I do? He lowered his voice. Snap the ruler. Declare equipment failure. I will issue a standard school ruler, and nobody will blame your earlier measurements. He said it like rescue, like kindness, like the crack would save me. I hesitated. He pressed harder, not with his hand, but with the invisible things he knew sat behind my ribs. My bursary review. My father's casual repair work for the school theater set, paid under a small contractor allowance Haldane, could end with one email. My mother's application for the Parent Support Fund to cover uniform replacements. My little sister Rosie's waitlist place in the junior design workshop. A student from your position cannot afford to submit a drawing based on a questionable tool, he murmured. Snap it, Mira. Better a broken ruler than a broken scholarship file. I heard the word scholarship and felt my hand obey. I lifted the ruler, bent it. It resisted for one humiliating second, as if the object knew more than I did. Then it snapped between 12 and 13 centimeters. The sound went through me. A few students looked up. Mr. Haldane immediately placed a school-issued ruler on my desk, noted candidate tool failure on his clipboard, and moved on. My original measurement note remained, but now the tool that proved it had been whole and registered was in two pieces. During marking, Professor Vale, the external safety design judge, asked why my scale correction was not consistently applied across the final drawing. I tried to explain the ruler issue. Mr. Haldane's incident note said my tool had broken during use, raising concern about earlier measurements. The school ruler I used after the snap matched 1:100 because I panicked and partially reverted under time pressure. My drawing became a hybrid, some corrected dimensions, some standard, all suspect. Elliot submitted a clean, beautiful plan using the printed 1:100 note. It looked compliant until compared to the scale bar, but because nobody foregrounded the discrepancy, the judges treated it as a minor interpretation difference. He won by 3 points. My feedback said, strong spatial instincts, but scale methodology unclear. Scale methodology unclear. I had broken the only thing that made it clear. The first life after that taught me that unclear methodology follows you. Without the Calder Scholarship, I left Meridian at the end of the year. My father lost the theater repair work after budget consolidation. My mother's support fund application was declined because priority was given to families with ongoing school participation. Rosie did not get into the junior workshop. I still studied design, but sideways. Drafting certificate, council admin, building compliance assistant, later evacuation plan documentation. I learned how many safety drawings were copied from old PDFs, scaled to fit pages, printed without checking, pinned to walls, laminated, and trusted by people who would need them most when smoke made every centimeter matter. I saw plans where doors swung the wrong way, stairwells were mislabeled, accessible exits were drawn through storage rooms, and scale bars vanished under logos. Every bad plan felt like a ghost of my snapped ruler. The community theater collapse happened on a Thursday night during a youth rehearsal. Not a full building collapse. That would have made headlines simple. It was a storage mezzanine failure above the backstage corridor, caused by overloaded shelving, a missing bracing inspection, and an evacuation plan that had been resized so the marked exit path looked wider than it was. I was there because my office had been auditing the venue's public safety documents, and I stayed late to compare the posted plan against the actual corridor. I had a ruler in my bag, a cheap metal one. I measured the printed plan and felt the same cold recognition. The scale note and bar did not match. Before I could finish photographing it, a crash came from backstage. Screams. The old storage rack shifted, then the mezzanine edge tore loose. I pushed 2 teenagers toward the door, but the corridor jammed exactly where the plan had pretended it would not. Something struck my shoulder. Then the shelving came down. I remember the taste of dust, someone crying, and my ruler sliding from my bag, landing beside my face. It was not broken. I was. My last thought, as the exit sign flickered beyond a crowd that could not move, was, "Use your ruler." Then the Meridian Design Hall returned. This time, Mr. Haldane's shadow fell across my desk, and I did not let the ruler leave the paper. "Candidate 39, he said. "Why have you altered the scale?" "The scale note conflicts with the scale bar. The packet states 1:100. The measurable reference bar says otherwise." His eyes sharpened. "Your ruler is old. It is registered. It may be faulty. Then I need the external supervisor to verify it before any instruction is given." That sentence did not sound brave. It sounded procedural. That was why it worked. He blinked. "That is unnecessary. You are questioning my registered tool. I am advising caution. Then I want the caution recorded." I lifted my hand, not the ruler. "Supervisor?" The external supervisor, Ms. Darrow, looked up from the front table. She was a retired civil engineer with silver hair cut short and the expression of someone who had seen enough site inspections to distress charm. "Candidate 39? Mr. Haldane says my ruler may be faulty because I measured the scale bar as 9.6 centimeters for 10 meters. I request tool verification before altering my drawing." The room went quiet in the way only exam rooms can, pencils still moving, ears fully awake. Mr. Haldane's jaw tightened. No need to interrupt the exam over a student's anxiety. Ms. Darrow walked down the aisle with a steel reference rule and a verification sheet. "Tool challenge during active exam must be recorded," she said. "Beautiful. Boring.
Deadly."
She placed the steel rule beside mine. The 0 marks aligned. 10 centimeters aligned.
20.
30.
Straight.
Accurate. She then measured the printed scale bar herself. 9.6 centimeters. She wrote it down. "Candidate 39's ruler is accurate. Printed scale discrepancy confirmed." Mr. Haldane's clipboard shifted in his hand. He tried to recover. The intended interpretation may still be the printed note. Ms. Darrow turned the packet toward him and tapped the instruction line. "Where printed notes conflict with measurable reference bars, candidates must justify the measurement system used. The candidate is permitted to justify use of the scale bar." "Of course," he said. "Naturally." But the word naturally came out wrong, as if it had hit a step. Ms. Darrow placed a small blue verification slip on my desk. "Continue. Your ruler remains approved." She looked at Mr. Haldane. "No candidate is to be asked to destroy approved equipment."
Destroy.
She chose the word before I said snap. Perhaps she had heard him. Perhaps she had seen enough men like him near enough tools. He leaned slightly as if to retrieve his authority from the desk. "Mira," he murmured, voice low again. "You are making this larger than it needs to be." I kept the ruler flat. "The plan is smaller than it says it is." A nearby student coughed. This time, I knew it was a laugh. Mr. Haldane's face did not change, but the clipboard dropped half an inch in his grip. He moved away. The final 40 minutes became the cleanest drawing I had ever made because fear had burned off everything unnecessary. I used the scale bar correction consistently. I widened the west corridor by removing the decorative display alcove. I relocated storage away from the emergency path. I changed the east fire door swing and annotated the clearance arc. I added an accessible turning circle at the junction near the ramp and noted that the printed plan reduction required real dimension verification before construction. My lines were not the prettiest in the room. They were alive to bodies. Elliot's plan, visible when I glanced up once, was beautiful and wrong. Elegant storage wall, symmetrical corridor graphics, door swings that looked balanced until you measured the real clearance. He had trusted the label. I had trusted the line. At pens down, Ms. Darrow collected my drawing, ruler, and verification slip together. Candidate 39. Ruler registered and verified during exam. She placed everything in a clear sleeve. Mr. Haldane watched from the front, clipboard held against his chest. I saw his fingers flex around it. In the first life, he had written tool failure. In this life, the tool had written back. The judging review exposed the trap quickly. Professor Vale spread the top designs on the long table under the display lights. Elliot's plan drew the first murmurs because it was gorgeous. Thin lines, perfect lettering, elegant circulation arrows, beautiful title block. Mine looked plainer beside it, more annotated, more urgent. Then Ms. Darrow placed the verification slip next to my plan. Professor Vale measured the scale bar on the exam packet. 9.6, he said. Another judge measured. Confirmed. He looked at Elliot's plan. Candidate 12U's stated 1:100 without correction. Mr. Haldane stepped forward. The packet note creates reasonable ambiguity. Ms. Darrow said, the instruction resolves ambiguity in favor of measurable reference. Professor Vale overlaid a transparent compliance template on Elliot's corridor. The west passage failed clearance. The fire door swing cut into the evacuation path. The accessible turn radius was short. Beautiful plan. Dangerous plan. Then Professor Vale looked at me. Candidate 39, explain why you trusted the scale bar over the printed note. I stood with my hands clasped so they would not shake. Because the packet included a specific instruction for conflicts between printed notes and measurable reference bars. A scale note can be copied from a master file, but the printed scale bar reflects the actual reduced copy in front of the candidate. For safety critical dimensions, I have to use the measurable reference and state the discrepancy.
Professor Vale nodded.
What would happen if a design team ignored that discrepancy? I thought of the community theater corridor in the life no one else remembered. The plan could appear compliant while the real space fails clearance. People would trust a drawing that was never checked against itself. The room went still. That kind of sentence makes design judges stop smiling. Mr. Haldane's last offense was presentation. Elliot's plan demonstrates superior drafting clarity, he said. Candidate 39's annotations are heavy. Professor Vale looked at him. Annotations explaining safety critical scale methodology are not clutter. Ms. Darrow added, especially after an attempted tool challenge. Mr. Haldane's hand tightened. Attempted tool challenge?
Professor Vale asked.
Ms. Darrow held up the verification sheet. Mr. Haldane questioned Candidate 39's ruler after she identified the scale discrepancy. Candidate requested verification. Ruler was accurate. Professor Vale turned to Mr. Haldane. Did you instruct the candidate to replace or damage her ruler? The clipboard slipped. Not fully yet. His fingers lost their grip, caught it by the top edge, then failed. It fell straight down, hit the polished floor, and the metal clip snapped open. Paper spilled across his shoes. Desk map, candidate list, a private note sheet. One page slid face up toward Ms. Darrow. On it, beside Elliot's candidate number, was a handwritten line. Keep him on stated scale. Challenge deviations as tool errors. His face drained. The clipboard had not merely fallen. It had opened. No one spoke for a second. That is how you know a room understands. Not because people gasp, but because they stop pretending not to. Ms. Darrow bent, picked up the note sheet by one corner, and placed it on the judging table. Mr. Haldane's mouth opened. Nothing useful came. His face had gone the color of drafting paper. Professor Vale looked from the note to Haldane, then to Elliot, who stood near the candidate row with his beautiful wrong plan still in his hands. Elliot stared at the note, as if seeing his father's handwriting for the first time. Assessment paused.
Of course it did.
That phrase again, polite and devastating. Students were sent to the courtyard. Parents were told there had been a procedural review. By the time I found my mother near the rain garden, the rumor had already grown legs. Ruler challenge, scale trap, clipboard fell, notes spilled, Haldane caught. My mother looked at my face and said, "Did he touch your ruler?" "No, good." "He told me it might be faulty." "Was it?" "No, good." Then she hugged me so hard the ruler sleeve crinkled between us. My father arrived late, leaning on his cane, and I told him the ruler had been verified against a steel reference rule. He closed his eyes. "It told the truth," he said. Rosie, who had come with him, asked, "Did the man's clipboard really explode?" I said, "Pretty much." She said, "Good. Clipboards are bossy." The investigation was short because the note from the clipboard did what dishonest people fear most. It removed interpretation. Mr. Haldane had prepared to challenge any student who identified the scale discrepancy, but the note beside Elliot's candidate number showed motive. Email review later found that he had helped Elliot practice from a master plan version where the scale note and bar still aligned. When the exam packet was reduced for printing, Haldane noticed the discrepancy, but did not alert the external team because correcting it would disadvantage Elliot's prepared method. Instead, he planned to treat corrected scale answers as suspect. Mine became dangerous because I not only noticed the error but documented it. In the first life, snapping the ruler let him turn my accuracy into tool failure. In this life, the ruler stayed whole long enough for his note to become louder than his voice. Elliot was removed from prize consideration, though not accused of knowingly cheating. He had trusted his father's preparation, which was both true and insufficient. Mr. Haldane was suspended from all scholarship duties and later resigned from Meridian. Officially, he left to pursue independent design consultancy. Of course, men whose clipboards fall always find another surface to hold. Meridian changed the drafting final rules. Any scale discrepancy had to be logged when identified. Candidate tools could only be challenged by external supervisors. Registered rulers were photographed before and after use, and staff with relatives in the exam could not access packet preparation notes. Boring reforms. Beautiful reforms. Every future ruler would be harder to snap. The scholarship ceremony happened 2 weeks later in the design theater. Not the grand hall. Too much scandal clung to the big stage. But everyone came anyway. Students sat on the floor between drafting tables. Parents stood along the walls. My mother held Rosie's hand. My father sat in the front row because Professor Vale insisted he should not stand with his cane when there were empty donor chairs available. Mr. Haldane was absent. Elliot sat near the back, face pale, no drafting tube. Professor Vale stood beside a projection of the corrected North Annex plan. The Calder Scholarship recognizes design that protects people, not merely drawings that appear polished, he said. This year's winning submission identified a scale conflict, verified the measuring tool, justified the correction, and produced the safest compliant redesign.
He looked at me.
The 2026 Calder Drafting Scholar is Candidate 39, Mira Devlin. I walked to the front with the ruler in its clear sleeve. The approval sticker was still on the end. The 0 mark still aligned. Professor Vale handed me the certificate and, beneath it, the verification sheet.
Keep both, he said.
Especially the ruler. My father cried. Quietly, but I saw. My mother clapped like she was trying to repair every meeting where we had been spoken to slowly. Rosie shouted, "Don't snap it." And the room laughed, but not in a mocking way. In a remembering way. Elliot spoke to me a month later in the workshop. I was sanding the edge of a model ramp when he appeared by the storage shelves holding a ruler of his own, still in packaging. I didn't know he wrote that note, he said.
No hello.
These boys never start with hello after the truth catches them. Did you know he wanted deviations challenged?
I asked. He looked down.
I knew he said the scale note was what mattered. Did you check the bar? No, why? Because he told me not to waste time on it.
Honest. Ugly.
Useful. He opened the new ruler package and stared at the 0 mark. When the clipboard fell, I wanted to disappear. You should have wanted to measure. He flinched, then nodded. I know. He looked toward the workshop door.
I'm sorry.
Not enough. But I am. I did not forgive him out loud. But I did say, if you want to design buildings, stop trusting notes you haven't checked. He said, Professor Vale said the same thing. Then he's right twice. We did not become friends. But weeks later, I saw Elliot reworking a plan after discovering a door swing conflict he had originally ignored. He looked miserable. He also fixed it. Growth often looks like a polished boy finally making an ugly correction. The Calder Scholarship changed my life, practically first. Tuition cleared. My father kept the small repair work he could still manage, then began teaching community workshops on home safety checks. My mother's support fund application became irrelevant because the scholarship covered what the fund would not. Rosie got into the junior design workshop through an external place and immediately became insufferable about measuring furniture. I went to the Calder Architecture and Safety Lab that summer and learned that the best designers did not worship drawings. They tested them against models, codes, bodies, wheelchairs, smoke paths, tired feet, bad lighting, panicked movement, and reality. A drawing was not true because it was neat. It was true because it survived contact with use. Years later, I became an evacuation and accessibility design consultant. My job was to ask annoying questions before disasters made them obvious. Does the printed plan match the actual corridor? Does the scale bar survive PDF resizing? Can a wheelchair turn where the arrow says it can? Does the door swing block the escape route? Are storage cabinets slowly stealing clearance from the path? Does the sign point to a door that is now locked? People called me intense. I accepted that. Intensity is what they call measurement when they wanted decoration. The community theater from my first life did not collapse in a second. I know because I inspected it myself after seeing the renovation notice. The evacuation plan had indeed been resized. The scale bar was wrong. The backstage corridor clearance failed once storage shelving was accounted for. The mezzanine bracing inspection was missing. I wrote a report, so direct the theater board called me alarmist. I asked them to include that adjective in the minutes. They closed the backstage corridor, removed the overloaded shelving, installed new bracing, and reprinted the evacuation map at the correct scale. The youth rehearsal moved to the church hall for 2 months. Everyone complained. Good. Complaints are what prevention sounds like when nobody has died yet. On the night I once lay beneath storage racks, I sat in the repaired theater watching Rosie's school performance, my ruler in my bag, whole and unnecessary. That is the best kind of tool, the one you no longer need because the room was fixed in time. I saw Mr. Haldane years later at a built environment education conference. Of course, he had rebranded as a consultant in portfolio precision. He approached after my panel on scale verification failures in public buildings, older, thinner, still carrying a clipboard. A different one. Black. Expensive. Mira Devlin, he said. You've made a career for measurement. Someone had to. His smile tightened. You always did enjoy proving people wrong.
No.
I enjoy measuring things before they hurt people. That exam was a difficult moment. Your clipboard made it clearer. His fingers tightened around the new one. I noticed. He noticed me noticing. Elliot suffered after that. Elliot learned to check the scale bar. You are still uncharitable. No, I said. I am still aligned at 0. His face hardened. For 1 second I thought the new clipboard might slip too. It did not. Some men learn only to grip harder. My mother eventually opened a small printing, drafting, and school supply shop near the bus interchange. She called it 0 Mark because our family had finally learned that subtlety does not keep people safe. The shop sold rulers, compasses, tracing paper, graph pads, plan tubes, printer scaling checks, and laminated signs that said "Do not fit TO page" without checking scale. My father sat near the front with a steel reference rule and tested students' rulers for free. Rosie designed a sticker of a tiny ruler standing like a sword. On the wall above the copier, my mother painted, "If the line is true, don't break the tool." Students came in with project plans, panicked because a teacher said their measurements looked wrong, and my father would say, "Measure it here. The table doesn't care who your teacher is." I loved him for that. Now, when I teach young designers, I begin with the ruler, not the software, not the rendering, not the glossy final board. The ruler. Place 0 where 0 belongs. Check the scale note against the scale bar. Measure twice, yes, but also ask who printed the page and whether the printer shrank the truth to fit margins. If a correction makes your drawing uglier, write the correction anyway. If someone says your tool must be wrong because your measurement threatens their favorite answer, ask for verification. If they tell you to snap it, understand what they are really asking. Not to break plastic, but to destroy the witness. The simple version is true. I was reborn. I used my ruler.
He told me to snap it.
His clipboard fell. But the simple version cannot hold the 0 mark, the 9.6 centimeter scale bar, my father checking the ruler against steel, the first life crack of plastic between my hands, Ms. Darrow verifying the tool, Professor Vale overlaying the compliance template on Elliot's beautiful dangerous plan, or the handwritten notes spilling from the fallen clipboard like a confession that had been waiting for gravity. It cannot hold the first life girl who broke the tool because a man told her broken evidence was safer than inconvenient accuracy. It cannot hold the second life girl, who learned that a ruler is not just a ruler, when everyone else is pretending the line is longer than it is. If you ever measure something and the number makes the room uncomfortable, do not bend the line to fit the people watching. Keep the ruler flat. Ask for the reference check. Let the 0 mark sit where it belongs. Make them write down the challenge before they touch your tool. And if the clipboard falls when the note inside it finally sees light, do not call it revenge. Call it gravity. Use your ruler. Keep it whole. Let the measurement stand.